What's up, guys? Thomas Mott here. Welcome into the Thomas Mott Show on a Saturday. I'm back. Yes, for all the subscribers here on the channel, I appreciate everyone here who wants to listen to this show, but as many of you know, I was out of the country the past week, and so I haven't been in this nice studio for the past couple of days. I had some handheld iPhone videos, which weren't that great, but I was trying to, talk about the big win over the Vikings and some of the stuff going on, and so forgive me for that, but we are back. We're not going out of the country anytime soon, and we're going to jump into, obviously, all of the news here on this, of course, edition of the Thomas Mott Show. Everything going on in the National Football League, obviously starting with our Philadelphia Eagles. Quickly, though, a lot of you guys are wondering where I was. I was in Norway. I did a whole trip up and down Norway, Lofoten Islands, Bergen, Oslo. Quick pick of a really cool hike I did called the Troll's Tongue. We'll throw that up on your screen right now. That's where I was. Had a lot of fun, but of course, you guys don't really care about my travels and more about the show and what's going on in the National Football League. And so let's jump into what is going on here, starting with the Philadelphia Eagles. There's been a lot of discussions about Jalen Hurts this week, and it's very fun to watch as the national media starts to really buy into Carson Wentz. I mean, every single national media pundit that you watch on a daily basis, not named the Thomas Mott Show, obviously, is raving about Jalen Hurts. And obviously, before this past win against the Vikings, everyone would talk about how, the Eagles are really good, but we don't know about Jalen Hurts. That was the whole storyline. The Eagles are really good, but we don't know about Jalen Hurts. Funny how that has shifted. There is one guy, though, who you might recognize, who no one has actually compared Jalen Hurts to, although the comparison is very similar in Donovan McNabb, who's not that sold on Jalen Hurts just yet. And I don't want to overblow these quotes here. But it is interesting to see how McNabb is not quite sold on Jalen Hurts just yet when the rest of the national media is very much in on him. So we go to, of course, our first story of the day, and that is the CBSSports.com article here. Eagles legend Donovan McNabb says Jalen Hurts is a franchise quarterback, thinks he's better for a team than Carson Wentz. Okay, so that's fine. We understand. That's a good headline overall. But it's funny to actually read what McNabb is talking about here when he went on the CBS Sports Radio Thursday night show. We'll read you a couple of quotes here. Quote, people need to look at Hurts' experience and how he got to this position. We're seeing him being able to put the pressure on his shoulders and being able to move forward with his head high. The change of the offense is better suited for Jalen Hurts. So that's an obvious quote. Nothing controversial about that. He's right. What Nick Sirianni has done with Jalen Hurts and this offense has done everything he possibly could to make Jalen Hurts be the best quarterback that he can. This offense elevates Hurts' weaknesses and is something that other NFL teams with struggling quarterbacks, think about the New York Giants, think about some of these other younger quarterbacks, should try and do. Build your offense around your young quarterback if you believe that young quarterback is good enough to win. Now, what McNabb says later on is a little interesting, and I want to throw that up on your screen right now. Quote, I wouldn't call it, say, Super Bowl right now. I think there'll be a strong NFC East contender being able to win the NFC East. I'm looking forward to them possibly making it and advancing to the second round. And at that particular point, as a player, you need a little bit of luck and an extra push to get over the hump. But I definitely see them a playoff team, a team that will be a little up and down over the regular season. There will be some highs and some lows, but I think they're strong enough from experience standpoint from the players to be able to overcome a lot of adversity they'll face, end quote. So there's Donovan McNabb telling you that the offense looks good, Hurts looks good, but to slow down and say this is maybe an NFC East team or a division winner, maybe a second-round playoff team, but he's not going all in on Super Bowl right now. And there are a couple of takes from this. The first of which is very obvious. McNabb, ever since he retired from the NFL and ever since he moved on from Philadelphia, has always been a little bit critical of the quarterbacks to come after him. And I think that's a little bit to do with the ego of Donovan McNabb. Not to say anything wrong with McNabb. We respect McNabb. McNabb was the quarterback I grew up watching when I first started watching Eagle games back in the early 2000s as a young kid. But he just feels a little bit jaded to the point that he was so successful and went to 5 NFC title games, and yet no one really talks about him as one of the great quarterbacks of the early 2000s. That's mainly because he didn't win a Super Bowl. Had he done that, it'd be a totally different story. But as you watch the other quarterbacks come after Donovan McNabb, whether it was Vic, Kevin Cobb, moving over to Sam Bradford, obviously Carson Wentz, and all the quarterbacks in between leading up to Hurts, McNabb has always been very, very critical of them. And I think that just him kind of being a little bit like, hey, I was better than all these guys, yet you guys don't really care about what I did in Philadelphia, which honestly, the national media doesn't care about McNabb, so I get where he's coming from that standpoint, but he's always seemed a little bit jaded. That's the first take. The second take, though, is that he is technically right about this Eagles team. We need to slow down a little bit. Now listen, I love the Eagles. Look at this. I'm wearing my vintage Eagles shirt. I got all the lighting and all the stuff. You guys know that I love the Philadelphia Eagles, and I very much think that they are going to win the NFC East, and they are Super Bowl contenders, but we do need to pump the brakes a little bit. It's only 2 games. Like, we've only seen Philadelphia play 2 games so far. If they lose in Washington on Sunday, which I don't think they will, but if they were to lose in Washington or against Washington at home on Sunday, people are going to immediately start abandoning ship, and you'll see the narrative start to change. You have to understand this is a long season. You have to understand Philadelphia has a lot of growing to do. Their pass rush is still very, very weak. I think overall, and to run the ball just a little bit better. I know they're like one of the best rushing teams in the National Football League, a little better balance, but there are still a couple of minor issues they need to go ahead and fix before we just go ahead and proclaim them the best team in the NFC and clearly the favorite to win the Super Bowl. Right now, it looks like that, but you need a little bit more evidence and a couple more weeks in the National Football League before you can actually say, hey, they're on par with the Buffalo Bills. It will be Eagles-Bills in the Super Bowl. Let's just pump the brakes a little bit. Again, that's not me hating. I think Philadelphia is so good. You guys do not understand how much trash talk I have done about the Eagles after that win against the Vikings. They look legit in every single category. But, as McNabb said, there will be ups and downs, and so take it 1 week at a time, and don't go parading around like you're for sure going to go to the Super Bowl this year and buy Super Bowl tickets. Take it a little bit slower. I think we can learn from McNabb here on that standpoint. But obviously, I think it's a little bit off in saying they might not win the NFC East, because if they lose the NFC East this year, a lot of bad things have to happen. Now, the other thing McNabb mentioned leads us into the next story here on the Thomas Mott Show on a Saturday, and that is Coach of the Year. A lot of people are talking about Jalen Hurts as an MVP and, this Eagle team being a Super Bowl team. Very little conversation has happened about Nick Sirianni, and I was watching some national media people after the win on Tuesday morning, and they were all talking about how, Sirianni's better than we thought, but let's talk about Jalen Hurts. That's the focus, right? That's the storyline that drives a lot of views on those national media outlets. No one's talking about what Nick Sirianni has done. Nick Sirianni was proclaimed the worst head coaching hire of last season. His very first press conference, people ripped into him for stuttering a couple of times. Like, imagine you having your first press conference and stuttering a little bit and then getting ripped for it. It was ridiculous. They ripped him last year because he threw the football too much until he decided to rely on the run, and now they're giving him very little credit for what he's done this season in year 2 as a seemingly, out of nowhere coaching hire just tied to the Frank Reich tree. Sirianni has completely revamped this offense. He's given up play calling, which is a massive ego thing to do. Coming from, I'm going to call plays. I want to do that. He did a little bit with the Colts, but I'm going to call plays, being like, hey, I'm not that good at calling plays. I'm going to take a step back, giving it over to Shane Steichen, who's been fantastic. What Sirianni has done cannot be overlooked. Don't just blow up Jalen Hurts and be like, it's all Jalen Hurts. It's a lot of Jalen Hurts, but it's a lot of Nick Sirianni putting Jalen Hurts in the right position to be successful, and we need to go ahead and acknowledge that, because at least Vegas is doing that right now. VegasInsider.com, you're up to date as of yesterday, NFL coaching odds, or for coaching odds for NFL Coach of the Year. Look who's number 2, Nick Sirianni. He's plus 700. He's literally ahead of Kevin O'Connell and Brian Dable and Brandon Staley and Doug Peterson and Dan Campbell. Goes all the way down the list. He's only behind Mike McDaniel, and that's because the national people think that the Tua project was a harder project than the Jalen Hurts project. That's why Mike McDaniel is sitting there, plus 100 ahead of him at plus 600. But the national betting people, who are normally right, are at least acknowledging that Sirianni has a massive he's a massive part, has played a massive part in getting Jalen Hurts to where it is. So while you're raving about Hurts and you're loving Jalen Hurts and you're feeling good about these Eagles, as you should, don't forget that Nick Sirianni was ripped up and down last year, and so far, 2 games in, looks really, really, really good. Okay, I think tomorrow I'm going to do a pregame show. I'm trying to do my first live pregame show here on the Thomas Mott Show, probably an hour before kickoff. If you guys are into that sort of thing, you can come hang out. Be like a fan-only pregame show, so only you guys, if you're a true fan, should go ahead and show up. If you want that, you can hit the thumbs up button. Also subscribe down below at the little red box. I'd appreciate that. We're close to 2,000 subscribers here, which is crazy. So if you like that, go down and sub. Speaking of that game on Sunday, we'll do a lot bigger preview tomorrow, but I do want to mention just one quick injury bite here, and that is Landon Dickerson, questionable for this one. Been dealing with this weird foot injury. We don't know exactly what it is, ankle, foot, toe. We have no idea. He was limited in practice this week, did not practice yesterday, and is officially questionable. The only real note here is that Sua Opeta, according to Bleeding Green Nation, the article you see on your screen, who has a lot of experience, would be the starting left guard if Dickerson is not able to go. It would not be, which is interesting, Cam Jurgens, who is more of the center backup versus the guard backup, although he's played a lot of guard, at least in preseason. So something to note there. Not a knock on Jurgens. I'm not worried about him, but Opeta would probably be the starting left guard if there were to go ahead and be a scenario where Landon Dickerson was not going to play on Sunday. Not a lot lot of big news in terms of what's happening with Washington from the injury standpoint. Casey Toohill is out. Same with Daniel Wise, the pass rusher. And, of course, Chase Young, who is on the PUP list right now, is not eligible to play until 2 weeks from Sunday, so he won't be out there. But that's just a little note to go ahead and throw in. There's also this quote going around that the national media did not pick up. If you Google it, it doesn't pop up. I had to find it on Reddit here. But a lot of people are talking about how Carson Wentz seemingly trashed the Eagles defense. Here's the quote, and you can see the little video. We won't play it, but here's the quote on Reddit. Carson Wentz on the Eagles defense. They're a good defense. They play fast and hard. I wouldn't say they're anything exotic, so we kind of know what we're going to get. People are acting like that's like a knock on the Eagle defense. It's not. The Eagles are not an exotic defense. Jonathan Gannon plays a very basic defense. We talk about it all the time here on the Thomas Mott Show. He rushes 4, he drops 7 into coverage, and lets you try and beat him by throwing against double coverages a lot against your best receiver, and he very rarely brings blitzes. He did a little bit in the second half against the Vikings, but not a lot. Wentz is not wrong. They're not exotic. This is not some sort of, super crazy Vic Fangio defense, that's just really hard to read pre-snap. You know what you're going to get, but what Philadelphia tries to do is they say, hey, we know that but we're better overall, and so far that's worked, especially in the Vikings game. They did nothing special in the Vikings game besides a couple of double coverages, and even not that many double coverages against Justin Jefferson, and they won a lot because they have the talent both on the outside and the inside. So we're acting like this is a massive, massive news story. It's not. Wentz is right. I mean, it's not exotic. There's nothing special, and it's nothing that you really need to study. Well, studying is important, obviously, in the NFL, but it's not something to keep you up at night. What keeps you up at night is the players Philadelphia has, and not necessarily the scheme. Not a knock on Jonathan Gannon, just how he likes to go ahead and play these games. Okay, final go ahead and quick storyline here. I want to jump into the national story, as we always do on the Thomas Mott Show, trying to tie in both Philadelphia and the rest of the NFL. And I like to look at tomorrow's slate of games to see what's important for Eagle fans, what's important for you as an NFL fan in general, because I think a lot of people who are subscribed to this channel are just NFL fans in general. And so I like to kind of tie this in here at the end. Not a lot of crazy big NFC games. There's a couple, but more on the AFC side. So Texans, Bears, snoozer. Raiders, Titans, snoozer. Both teams 0-2 there. Kind of surprising. This Colts-Chiefs game feels like a trap game on the road. The Colts have got to figure things out. They have been an absolute disaster so far, and it's just not been what you thought Matt Ryan would be able to do. He looks pretty darn old. Obviously, the game everyone cares about, Bills-Dolphins. That's going to be a fascinating look into see what Tua and Mike McDaniels are able to do, although Buffalo's still a 5-point favorite. It just feels like it could be close, but Buffalo's a way better football team, and so you expect them to win. I'm fascinated by Lions-Vikings. I want to know which of those two teams we've already beaten in Philadelphia that's better. I think the Lions are legit. They really stomped on the Washington Commanders last week, minus a couple of late errors there by the Lions defense. But that is a very, very fascinating game. Ravens-Panthers, who cares? Bengals-Jets, who cares? Saints-Panthers, I think, is a snoozer, too. I think the Saints are grossly overrated. Jameis Winston is not that good. Jag-Chargers, not a big deal. Rams-Cardinals will be interesting because the Cardinals got blown out in Week 1. They figured things out last week in that late comeback against the Raiders. What are the Rams with Matt Stafford right now and that horrific offensive line? Something to keep an eye on from an NFC standpoint. Falcons-Seahawks is a snoozer. Packers-Bucks is going to be interesting. I think the Packers win this game. The Bucks, to me, are getting not lucky, but they just haven't had a lot of offensive production. And if Rodgers can figure things out against that Bucks defense, keep an eye out on that one to be a really big one on Fox. And then your Sunday nighter it's a lot of intrigue there. Denver, obviously, with Russell Wilson, but I think the 49ers, they went from being not that scary with Trey Lance because Lance did not look ready to go to being really, really good with Jimmy G. And I know that right now Niner fans are freaking out about Lance getting injured and, the franchise and the 3 first-round draft picks, but you're better off with Jimmy Garoppolo. Like, Jimmy Garoppolo, if you want to win this season, he's your best option, so keep an eye on them. And then, of course, the Monday Nighter. Let's just hope Cooper Rush is not that good. You need to root for the Giants to win this game. I know you don't want the Giants to be 3-0, but Dallas is going to get Dak Prescott back, and I think they're going to figure things out a little bit through the middle of the year. The Giants are a little bit of fool's gold. They haven't had an impressive win yet because Tennessee is 0-2. So you root for the Giants in this one because the thought process is the Giants will eventually come back down to earth and Philadelphia will beat them twice, whereas Dallas it's at least a better, I would say, roster, especially defensively, than the Giants. So that's kind of the take there on the Monday night game. That's it, though. That's it for this edition of the Thomas Mott Show. A little longer here on a Saturday. I wanted to go ahead and give you guys the full rundown. I know I was out of town. I appreciate you guys hanging in there. I'm back and ready to go, as Mike Greenberg says, back and better than ever. And we're going to hopefully do a live show tomorrow. So if you guys want to, come up an hour before kickoff and hang out and chat and just have a good time, just subscribe and stay tuned for that. Got to try to do that tomorrow before the game. Okay, that's it. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Good to be back. See ya.